Hello, friends. So, welcome back for another Ayurveda monthly community class. Today, we're going to dive into, as usual, the topic of Ayurvedic psychology, but there's so many things we can cover within those topics, within that broad topic. So, today, we're going to go into a little bit more about the emotional challenges of each dosha as well as in kind of broad sweeping categories, but you'll start to identify yourself in one or more of these categories. But even more importantly or interestingly than the challenges of the doshas. So some of you may have already have a little background in Ayurveda and kind of have a little understanding of some of the emotional tendencies of each of those elements and doshas. And if you don't, this is still a great place to begin. But what I find is really interesting is how do we then harmonize those? What is the superpower of each dosha? How do you coax forth the supportive qualities of each or lean into different qualities of our whole person that will then help harmonize and balance the challenged aspects per dosha? So these are some of the things we want to cover today. And let me make sure everything's silenced. Make sure all of your devices are silenced so that you can have your focus on today's topic. As usual, we aim for an hour, but I'm starting a little late and I always talk too long. But I'll do my best. So I want to share a little bit as we dive into this topic. I want to give you a little bit of my story. I haven't shared my story in most of these classes in a while. And I think it's really valuable to kind of look at why this topic is so near and dear to my heart. And you might kind of be able to self-reference a little bit in your own journey. And then specifically, other than a brief outline of my story and how I came to study Ayurvedic psychology specifically and really do this deeper emotional resolution work, I want to kind of show you a little bit of an overview of my therapeutic process. So I have been practicing Ayurveda for over 12 years, and I've found that there has been limitations to the physical practices of Ayurveda, and that there have been basically that there's an emotional depth that's required to access to resolve in the tissues and in our bodies in order to really free up our health. And so this is part of what brought me down that path. But I realized also, as this is part of my own story, but it's also as I was working with clients over the last over a decade, I started realizing, oh, I can only take people so far, which is into their healing, which is why I realized how vital it was to go into the emotional aspect and why we need more than tools to just try to reduce stress, more than tools to just try to, soften our anxiety, but we actually need a deep, comprehensive process that we can be guided through to really deeply resolve the issues on the cellular level, on the doshic level, in the level of the subconscious mind. So these are the things we'll be talking about today, and of course outlining both the individual challenges of each dosha as well as the superpowers of each dosha and how to bring about more harmony internally. So the one thing I don't know if I've shared in past classes, but I've been working in the wellness field since 2004. I only kind of quantified that a few days ago. And I was like, oh, wow, it's been since 2004. But I had all these health issues that I developed. So digestive problems, migraines, reproductive issues, and anxiety and kind of panic attacks that would mostly happen in sleep. So I guess you could say insomnia to some degree, but I didn't identify that. And I was very frustrated, having already been working in the wellness field, that I couldn't figure out the solutions to my problems. Then came yoga and Ayurveda in my life, which healed the majority of all those issues, or at least for several years, I was free of digestive pain. I could eat again. The headaches wouldn't shut me down for days anymore. All of these dead ends that I was hitting in the different doctors and practitioners telling me there's nothing wrong with you, yet I was curled up in a ball in pain. Like, all of these things were what seemed to be miraculously resolved as a result of finding Ayurveda as well as yoga, because they're sister sciences. They go together. Ayurveda is the therapeutic extension of yoga, which is also a holistic science. It's not just a physical exercise practice as it's come to be known in the West, but it's actually a very comprehensive has a lot of philosophical depth, and is actually the underlying foundation of Ayurvedic psychology. So yoga and Ayurveda work together. So these systems brought me out of tremendous imbalance and disharmony in my system. And I felt really calm and peaceful again, and started working with other people to help them heal and empower them with the tools that I had learned. Several years into starting my practice of Ayurveda, though, I found myself with creeping anxiety again, and feeling really depleted, like I was ravenously hungry, but nothing that I ate like really satisfied. And so my vata just started creeping up again. And I started getting really mentally confused at, what was going on. Like, come on, I was in the wellness field, couldn't find the answers. Yoga and Ayurveda is this like vast body of wisdom that healed me. And how can there be limitation to that? Well, in some senses, there wasn't limitation to that. It was just that I was only applying kind of like Ayurveda 101, when Ayurveda and yoga are a very deep, vast science. But I started having more awareness and realization that the depth of my struggle wasn't just physical. And then majority of my practice, I work with women and men, but probably 90% women. So most of the women I worked with too, I was realizing, oh, they're starting to find limitation, and there's a depth to their struggle that's not just physical. And then even the men that would come to me throughout our like counseling work together, there would be different things revealed about, early childhood or some kind of emotional struggle that just kind of, they were able to get to a certain level of wellness, but everyone kind of hit a plateau, myself included. We all kind of hit this plateau. And so I started exploring more and going deeper into Ayurvedic psychology, specifically yogic psychology, Ayurvedic psychology, and really deep diving into more therapeutic modalities, which I then studied extensively, experienced for myself, excavated the caves of my own inner experiences from the past, my own emotional, hidden, buried places, and then was able to start helping other people, guide them into those places, and as well and then that, it turned out, was where the deep-seated vata imbalance was really stuck. That turned out to be where the stubborn pitta or kapha imbalance was actually stuck. There are so many tools in like the physical Ayurveda, and most of what's taught in Ayurveda today, which is wonderful that it's become much more, there's more awareness around it. It's more common, and there's a lot of like general information circulating about it, which is wonderful. But there were two things that I found were actually really limiting to its application. One is that most Ayurvedic education now is taught in dogma. So it's taught with the restrictive guidelines and rules, which are an important phase of healing when we are having what we call perverted cravings of our body, meaning the cravings are coming from our imbalance. We need some kind of restrictive bumpers and boundaries so that we can come back into some place of like being able to trust our cravings. Then our cravings become healthy. So we need some of those kind of rules and restrictions and guidelines at first. And that's kind of Ayurveda 101, what I was saying. It's like but it can become dogmatic, because then it leads to inflexibility of the mind. So we think that Ayurveda has to look this way, or our health practices have to be very rigid and look this way. But then it creates a prison around our own self-care and our own, we start to cling and get attached to this specific way of doing something, afraid that if we don't do it that way, we are going to fall back into ill health. So there's a graduation process that needs to happen. So we need to graduate out of the dogmas of rules and restrictions and following steps into more intuitive self-healing expression, more attunement, into more awareness. So that was one of the main things that I realized was missing. And then number two was just the lack of emotional awareness. I guess there's three, and third one just came to my mind. So there's a lack of emotional sensitivity. And what do I do when all of these things are coming up? So I would work with a lot of clients that would, some of them were fortunate enough to go all the way to India and go through Panchakarma. And Panchakarma is 5 cleansing practices that people go through in a total immersion. So they go to ideally they go to India and a Panchakarma center, and they do it for 4 or 5 weeks, and they drink a lot of oil and they purge a lot of stuff, and they get Ayurvedic body work, and they do all these things that are supposed to get all these impurities out of their system. And it does work, depending on the condition. There are limitations to it, of course. But what ended up happening is all these emotions would come out, because when you're purging physical toxins and all these past experiences and emotions are also flooding out of your system, they're coming to your awareness as they're leaving. People didn't have the tools, and they would reattach they would be re-traumatized by these experiences, and then they kind of swallow them back into their body. And then just the fact of traveling to India and going through this, the big time zone change, and India is not a relaxing place. It's a very intense, energetically intense place. And then all the air travel and stuff. And then they'd come back home, and then they were in such a vastly different environment than home there, that they couldn't figure out how to really like integrate the way they were living there, that was so calm, peaceful, and healing, back to home. So they would redevelop their illness because they didn't know how to process the emotions. They couldn't, they ended up, and just the lack of integration. And then the third thing, so I upgraded that from a list from 2 to 3 in terms of limitations. The third thing that I found is that Ayurveda is born of the Indian subcontinent. So it is translated through the application to Indian-bodied humans. And us here in the West, the Western civil, like dominant cultures and countries, our bodies are different. So not just from a Vata Pitta Kapha standpoint, because there's Vata Pitta Kapha constitutions in all continents, countries, cultures, but because Ayurveda was predominantly practiced by Indian-bodied Vaidyas, which is the name for an Ayurvedic physician, It was interpreted through that lens of what they saw through generations and generations and generations of practicing Ayurveda on predominantly Indian bodies. And so what worked for them nutritionally and how they related to emotions culturally, or even spiritual practice and all that, it was a different context. So there was actually, so I've worked with mostly, again, predominantly women who suffer from a lot of hormonal imbalances and digestive disturbances and autoimmune diseases and all the other things that, and overweight and insomnia and stress and anxiety and all these things. And when they try to apply Ayurveda from interpreted through Indian bodied, they became nutritionally depleted. And the vata wasn't actually becoming pacified. So that's a whole nother class. And I've created some deeper programs to talk about. So I just mentioned nutritional. So this is a foundation. This is the physical foundations of Ayurveda are different when you apply it to Western bodies versus Indian bodies. And I have to give all gratitude and credit to my current mentor, Vaidya, who I've been studying with for the past 7 years, who helped me understand this different translation. So I have been studying with him in that context to understand, because like I said to you in my story, I learned all the Ayurveda, all this Ayurveda, 101, all the clinical basics of how to treat myself and others. And we were able to resolve a tremendous amount of symptoms. But at some point, the anxiety came back in, the vata creeped back up, and there weren't the emotional tools to resolve the deeper stuff. And there were imbalances that were never met because of the difference in Western bodies and Indian bodies. So, so that's a whole nother topic. In terms of nutritionally, and I've created an Ayurvedic gut reset and an Ayurvedic personalized cleanse program that takes you through all the details of making sure you're being nutritionally met on all those levels. And that's a very, very important and vital aspect of calming vata and making the whole mind-body system feel safe, because it's hard you can't talk yourself into feeling safe through positive affirmations, meditation, nothing, if your physical body is depleted and essentially cellularly starving. So that's important foundation. But today, the main part of our talk today is I want to dive into more of the emotional expressions of each dosha, the emotional challenges and superpowers of each dosha, to help empower you with the perspective and to start to understand what are the tools that each dosha needs to be able to really pacify the imbalance emotionally. Because like I said, one of the limitations I found was that emotionally there was a deficit in terms of I got to a point of realizing the depth of the things that I was struggling with, and the women and men that I work with are realizing there's something that's not just physical here. I had one client specifically tell me, in our first meeting, she came to me, she's like, I feel like I've been looking for you for months, for 9 months. She's like, I've just been waiting for you to show up, and then somehow you magically showed up in my life. But she's like, I've been tracking this pattern inside of me where I'm triggered by something in my external environment. There's this anxiety that develops. So she said fear turns into anxiety, and it turns into a paralysis, and then an overthinking where I can't move and act, but I'm just over ruminating, overthinking, and then trying to protect. And then she said, and then she would have to grab onto something that would be a stabilizer. So her stabilizer was a prescription that her doctor gave her that was kind of like a sedative pharmaceutical. She never wanted to take it. She hated how it made her feel because it made her whole mind feel dull. It helped her feel calm. It would get her out of a panic attack, because that whole pattern that I just mentioned would escalate for her. And then it would escalate all the way to physical symptoms. She was having pain in her neck. She was getting headaches. She was having insomnia. She was having pain associated with her moon time. So every month when she would have the bleeding phase of her cycle, she would get really bad cramps. And then outside of that, she would just have digestive discomfort and just aches and pains in her body. So she said, I tracked it from fear to anxiety to this paralysis to this overthinking to this need to be near my stabilizing substance, and then it would give rise to all these physical symptoms. And so with this, her stabilizing substance was a pharmaceutical, which again she didn't want to take, but she did when it got really, really bad and she needed it. But she couldn't be away from it. She said, I need to have it in my purse no matter where I go. Like, I can't leave the house without knowing it's in my purse, because what if I'm, on the train, or what if I'm in a public place and I feel that feeling of panic? I need to know that it's there. And sometimes she would just grab it in her purse and hold the bottle and just be like, okay, I know I can take this if I need it. And it would usually calm her down enough. But if she didn't have it, she would feel even more anxious. So what is your stabilizer? If you're sensing something is happening in your health, and that's not just physical, or that there's something emotionally replaying itself for you over and over, and perhaps you're starting to notice the connections between physical symptoms and it, do you have something that's a stabilizer? Like, if it's not a physical bottle of pharmaceuticals, maybe it's herbal. Is there a specific tea you feel like you can't live without? Is there a comfort place that you go? What's your stabilizer? Is it food? I do have a lot of clients that maybe don't realize that it's food, but they have to eat to feel like stabilized. But maybe that means that they overeat, or they eat when they're not hungry, and then it can throw their gut off, and their gut has to work harder. So it gets creates some irritation in the system. Is your stabilizer a person? Is your stabilizer a pet? Think about those things in your life that if you were to take them away, you would feel very anxious and emotionally vulnerable, and you would be a little bit unsure of how to ground yourself if you didn't have them. So part of the goal, and if we had more time, maybe in today's class, I'd say, oh, take your journal and write that down, but make a little note to yourself, maybe after today's class, to reflect on that prompt. So the goal of Ayurvedic counseling and this therapeutic approach that I'm talking about, which is through a program that I administer in a personalized one-on-one way, which I call the Enlightened Body System. It's to give you the tools internally so that you're not clutching onto tools externally. But it's more than giving you the tools internally. It's, how do I exist in the world in such a way that I'm not constantly triggered by my environment? How do I exist in the world in a way that I actually just feel contented, stable, authentically calm from within? Like, I'm not trying to calm myself. It just naturally comes from me. Connecting these dots of Ayurvedic psychology does this beautifully, because it connects all the dots of physical, mental, the mind stuff, the emotional stuff, the stuff that's in the body, in the tissues, the stuff that's also spiritual. It has an orientation towards higher power, whatever that means to you, but the source of your life itself, the source of your breath. These are all important pieces to integrate, because as a lot of clients that come to me, they say, I've been in talk therapy for many years, maybe on and off, but for many years, I have awareness of the things that happened to me in the past that were really hard, or my childhood. And they've done breath work and yoga and positive thinking and, maybe even different kinds of spiritual practices. But they get to a point where they're like, I can't keep ignoring this thing inside that feels like it's hidden in me, and it's holding me in this pattern. They're craving real resolution. So that's what Ayurvedic psychology and therapeutic counseling through the Ayurvedic psychology lens really affords us. It creates that for us. It allows us to access a really deep place of authentic peace. So it's like, from being triggered by the environment, being triggered by doshic imbalance, by, too much pitta, too much vata, too much kapha, being triggered by people around you or situations or sounds or smells, overwhelmed by stress, and maybe even withdrawing into yourself because you don't know how to be feeling safe in environments. So you start to withdraw yourself because it feels overwhelming. What Ayurvedic counseling and this perspective that we're sharing today on Ayurvedic psychology through this therapeutic lens can offer you is to really feel safe in your body, to feel safe in relationship to others, to feel safe in different environments, maybe different environments that make you feel really alive and peaceful, but that you're still hesitant to go into. Like, for instance, I have another client that I worked with many years ago, and she had this conditioning from childhood where she had very strict parents, and really she just had very anxious parents, because when we're very anxious, we sometimes turn to control to try to ground our anxiousness. So her parents were most likely very anxious, but then they in turn controlled her, and they put this programming into her psyche, which was, don't go outside or you'll die. Like, they were afraid of her getting hurt. So they turned that into control, and she learned nature is, terrifying, but also she was drawn to the beauty of nature. So she had this conflict inside of her where, like, I feel like nature is very healing, but I don't feel safe when I'm out in it. Right. So there comes in that kind of conflict of sometimes, like, wanting to move towards the thing that will bring you peace, but somewhere hidden in there. And she didn't even consciously remember that. That was part of the work we did was regression therapy, where she was able to wind back the wheels of time and drop into her subconscious. And she had that memory that was implanted. And then it became so obvious all the ways that her parents reinforced that. But she was drawn to something that she knew consciously would be healing and supportive and nourishing and nurturing for her. Yet her body, when she approached it, felt apprehensive, contracted, triggered by it, fearful. They're emotionally responding. So there might be something in your life like that, where you don't have a conscious memory of a specific thing. Most of the time we don't. Most of the time we have no conscious memory of things that our body remembers, but our body remembers better than our conscious mind. And that's part of a coping mechanism that Ayurveda says our subconscious mind is developed in the first 7 years of life. Most of it is in our body, stored in our body, because our mind is not only in our brain, it's not only our conscious mind. Our mind is the center of awareness in every cell of our body. Our mind is located in your entire body. Your pinky toe, your mind is in your pinky toe, your mind is in your knees, your mind is in your fascia, your mind is in your organs, your mind is in your heart and your pericardium. Your mind is not just limited to here. We experience our mind. And when we talk about our mind, we touch our head. And that's because where the major the major aspects of external information come in through our senses, through the holes in our head, our two nostrils, our mouth, our ears, our eyes. So there's a majority of information coming in through our head. So we think our mind is limited to the place where it has the most, sense receptors. But there's also sense receptors on your whole body through your skin. And so your whole body is also perceiving. And there's also subtle energetics that are kind of in this society we're taught to ignore them, or that they're not valid. So we forget to learn, we don't cultivate that, but it's an innate ability of every human to have a sixth sense, which is, when something feels right and not feel right. But that was trained out of us as a result of just being in this society. And so I won't there's so much more I could say on that, but I won't go down that road. But all that to say, your mind is located everywhere. So you might have, like my client I was just telling the story about, who had this push-pull thing with outside, being like, nature is going to heal me. But then her body's like, no, nature's scary. Nature means, like, she didn't realize that, oh, that healthy thing for me somehow equates to my harm. And so our bodily instinct is always going to gear us towards self-preservation. So to embark on a journey of really deep, healing of these things inside of us, we have to learn how to work with Vata. No matter what doshic type you are, we have to learn how to work with Vata and how to make it feel calm and safe, because Vata is predominant in your nervous system no matter who you are. Everyone has all three doshas. Everyone has Vata, and everyone has Pitta, and everyone has Kapha, all working in their body in different ratios. And everyone's nervous system is predominantly Vata. And everyone who has a trauma or a past painful experience has excess Vata somewhere in their body. The way that expresses itself might be more like Pitta, might be more like Kapha, or might be like Vata. So, but nonetheless, there's no pain without Vata. So remember that there's no pain without Vata. Vata and pain go together. So there's no pain signal without Vata, and any kind of pain that is crystallized, unshed tears, crystallize into a systemic stuckness that is always somehow connected with Vata, because Vata is movement. It's the air element. So part of your nervous system transmission, and me moving my hands as I'm talking, is Vata in movement. So we always need for Vata to be able to move, to get in touch with these things and to express. But when Vata is really high, it gets frozen, stuck, cold, can be even seemingly catatonic, because it just becomes so overwhelmed. So you think about, if you are in an environment that's really dry and cold and windy, it's like at some point when there's a gentle breeze, oh, that feels nice. But then when the wind comes rushing, most of us brace ourselves, right? When the wind gets really, really strong, it's very hard to be fluid and like watery when the wind is at 60 miles an hour in your face, right? Like you stick your head out the window in a car. It's like, that's fast wind. So when the wind is really high in our body, it can cause paralysis. And then that causes our whole system to guard and to become kind of frozen. And so this is the paralysis of past pain. It creates a dynamic internally where everything else gets blocked as a result. Everything else gets blocked. So that means all the health, all the nutrients, the things that the prana that needs to get to where it needs to go can't get there. So then those areas start withering away. And so we need to bring in the therapeutic approach to be able to get everything to be warm and soft and nurtured and nourished, and then more fluid, so that these things can start communicating with each other again. Basically, your body needs to be able to communicate with different aspects of itself in order to have health. So health is communication. Ill health is constriction, paralysis, guardedness, tightness. So what this then means in your body is once that vata is calmed, and then however it's also expressing itself, once that pitta is calmed, once that kapha is calmed, then your energy is restored. Then you're able to have alertness and awakeness and good concentration and focus and memory during the daytime. And at night, you're able to relax down, go to sleep, stay asleep, rejuvenate all night, not have a ton of dreams. You're able to be present with your work, present with your children, present with your family members. There's an ease about you when these deeper things are balanced. So I hope this is making sense so far. Yeah. I'm not a big statistics person, but I want to help you connect these dots. I want to at least just let you know about a study that was done, I don't even know, many years ago. I can't quote. I'm really bad at quotes and stats, but you might want to just on your own look some of this up, because it's really fascinating and it just helps us connect some of these dots, that these things Ayurveda is known for thousands of years, the connection between physical health and emotions. But it's also fun for our Western minds to see the quantification of it in modern times. So just briefly, I want to acknowledge that there was a study done called the ACE study. ACE is an acronym, ACE. It stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. So if you weren't convinced enough already just by the things that we were talking about in terms of connecting those dots, if you look up the ACE study, you'll realize that these researchers quantified, and thanks to the ACE study, the study of adverse childhood experiences, they studied tens of thousands of people over decades of years. Like it was a massive study that really changed the validity within the Western healthcare system, to at least acknowledge that there is a connection between what we went through as a kid and what we're experiencing in our health as an adult. So the ACE study quantifies these adverse childhood experiences, and they've since gone on to expand the study for ACEs into more and more details. But the very basic of it, it started with 10 questions, 10 ACEs. So you can have an ACE score of 1 or 0 or 4 or 7 out of 10. And that will, with every ACE that you have, you're exponentially more likely to have some form of chronic illness, or to basically it increases morbidity and mortality, which means the increase of sickness and illness over the course of your lifetime and the likelihood of death, early onset death, those types of things. And then also there are indicators within the psychological field of people having, like, for instance, if you have an ACE score of 4 or more, you're 4 times more likely, or 400% more likely to be diagnosed with clinical depression, compared to a person that has an ACE score of 0. So there's like an increasing, like exponential increase. So they've quantified, they've done a lot of work with the ACE study and inflammatory conditions, autoimmune conditions, rheumatism. There's exponential increases. If you have 2 or more out of 10 ACEs, if you have only 2 or more, you are at a massive increase, enhanced risk of developing all inflammatory conditions, autoimmune conditions, rheumatism, things like that, as well as anxiety, depression. And they equated these ACEs also with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so for me, I use it as an awareness tool. I think it's important to understand the categories of influences that happened, before we were 18 years old. That's where the ACEs are measured from, on or before your 18th birthday. Now, and it just goes hand in hand with what Ayurveda already says, when your subconscious mind is being developed and these deep imprints. But also, interestingly, more than 2/3 of the population, which is also just what's reported, more than 2/3 of the population have at least one ACE. They've had at least one adverse childhood experience. So this kind of just sets the stage for understanding that, hey, there's a really big issue here. There's a really big issue here with healing chronic illness, because Western medicine and even many natural, quote unquote, holistic therapies still find a big plateau when it comes to healing chronic illness, meaning any health imbalance or physical challenge that you've been experiencing for 3 months or more. And medicine is an amazing, Western medicine, allopathy is amazing at what it's amazing at. I'm friends with an emergency medical doctor who retired from her career. I was just talking to her last week. She retired because it started to hurt her emotionally with so many people that would come into the ER, that she knew that there was something to do with emotions, trauma, stress, anxiety, and she knew that she couldn't help them. It just broke her heart every day that she couldn't help them. Yet she was very good at giving them, the medicines or the surgery or the immediate actions to remedy acute conditions. And she loved that part of her job. But she said overwhelmingly more and more people were coming to the ER that really just had trauma and that were, dealing with things that are much deeper. So a big take-home message here for you is that healing requires emotional depth. Healing requires emotional depth work and really skilled facilitation to navigate into the depths of your emotions, to reprocess and resolve the things that have been hidden, buried, or stuck inside, because it is perpetuating illness if you've been experiencing something for a long time and you can't quite break free and you feel stuck there. So I'll tell you one more story that ends up being really inspiring, and then we'll break down the Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. But I had a woman come to me many years ago. She had tried traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, meditation, a lot of personal development work, a lot of positive affirmations and positive thinking and positive psychology. And she had done talk therapy as well. But she came to me, she had done all these things and they just weren't helping her with this very, very deep pain imbalance that she was experiencing. She was flying all over the US to different specialists to try to get a diagnosis. She couldn't get a diagnosis because it was non-bacterial. She was basically having this intense pain complex that she said was like a train coming out of nowhere, like a train coming to hit her, and she was stuck on the tracks and she felt and she couldn't move. And when it would hit her, she would be completely stuck in bed for at least 3 days. And it was causing these very severe whole body muscle contractions. She couldn't keep anything inside of her. She had a very extreme fever. She was having these boils that would come out of on her skin and these skin conditions. And it was very, very painful for her. And she was completely incapacitated. Like, she was a very positive woman. She was a go-getter. She was like, I'm not giving up on this thing, but it was impacting her relationships. Like, she could never really relax into her relationship because she was always a little bit on edge. Like, when's the train gonna come? When's that next train gonna come? And she would also, she wanted to advance in her career, but she kept getting thrown off because when's that next train gonna come? She couldn't plan a vacation. What if the train comes then? Like, she had a hard time even going out to do social things. She needed to be not too far from home because what if the train came and hit her? Then she'd be down and out for 3 days, very, very intense, and sometimes getting hospitalized for it. So as we worked through the process of Ayurvedic psychology, and we went deep and through the therapeutic process and guiding her into the psyche, it started to become revealed these certain depths. And I won't get into all of them, but there were things, actually, some of the things she experienced in her childhood that were painful, and the way that she kind of adapted to her environment as a result. And our adaptations are part of our resilience factors, but they always come at a cost. And the cost usually catches up with us late, like decades later, down the line. There's some cost. Now, the adaptations, we can keep the things that have been working for us, but then we need to address the cost and try to bring those back into balance. So those things that she adapted as a kid to kind of survive, so to speak, in the household of emotional repression and quarreling and that kind of thing, she had to adapt, but then they came at a cost later on. So we had to work through those. But then what was actually revealed through this process were not even traumas that she had, but traumas that her mom went through, and that she felt were passed down through her in utero experience. And then even further than her mom, there were traumas that her grandmother went through, and then there were traumas that she culturally went through, from the part of the world that she was from and the culture that her family line was raised in. And so all of this was revealed and able to be transmuted, healed, and worked through the process of Ayurvedic psychology and therapeutic counseling. And from going through that process, no longer the attacks. She would have an attack almost once, at least every month to 2 months. She would never go more than 2 months without having an attack. So that's at least 6 times a year that she was that incapacitated, if not up to a dozen times a year. When it was really bad, it was like up to a dozen times a year. And then with some of the things she tried, it got down to like 6 times a year, say. But then she went an entire year without having any attack of that train. And then she went down to when the quote unquote attack came, it started decreasing in its intensity. And then she started being able to kind of, with her mind, I wouldn't say control, but preemptively notice certain early warning signs that used to trigger her into an attack. And she learned how to repattern those so she would no longer get attacks. And so now she was able to, not only she expanded her career, she took on this job of her dreams. Her and her partner at the time got married, and they have a house. And like, I've checked in with her not too long ago. She's still doing really well and thriving in her world and not having the attacks. So she was able to reclaim her life, which is what we're all wanting to move towards, right? So let's go into the Vata Pitta Kapha and really start to break down, okay, what are the tendencies of each, and what are the approaches of each, the superpowers, the things that we want to coax forward of each. And I know I told you I would do my best to stay within a certain time period, and it's also already not happening, but that's okay. I'm still going to give you this this take home. But I don't know, for today, maybe it's I'm feeling a little sentimental at the end of the year. um I think it's really important that we destigmatize these conversations around emotions, because a lot of times, and especially this time of year, especially if you're in the Northern Hemisphere and you're in the solstice time, in the darkest time of the year, or really anytime you're watching this, of course, but there's a tendency to withdraw and feel really isolated and alone. And I wanted to share more stories in this class with you, because I wanted you to, one, have hope for like, wow, look at these turnarounds and look at the direction that I could really go. And two is to realize like, oh, I'm not alone. Like, oh, Alicia went through this. Look, she came out on the other side and she's thriving. Oh, look, all these clients and students that she told us stories about, they went through it too, and somehow they were able to come out on the other side. So I most importantly wanted you to leave today with a feeling of hope, and then also with this connecting these dots of like, there's so much more to Ayurveda than the current, general dialogue about it is given. There's so much more depth, and that Ayurvedic psychology takes us very deep into our subconscious, and then the therapeutic approach with that can really help reprocess and repattern those things that keep us stuck in chronic illness. And yeah, and I need to know that, and healing requires emotional depth. So if you take nothing else away from today, nothing else about the nuances of Vata Pitta and Kapha that I'm about to share, please take that away. Emotional healing requires depth. And Ayurvedic psychology, facilitated in a therapeutic manner, has what you need to go into those depths and really connect the dots of not just processing trauma, not just getting better health, but helping them meet in the middle to where the processing of those inner emotions liberates your physical body into more wholeness and health and wellness. So for Vata types, we did talk quite a bit about Vata already, but Vata is wind. So Vata, if there's a lot of Vata that's active in your system, in your psychology specifically, and next year, by the way, in 2024, we're going to do classes on your mental constitution. So we're going to talk about your Ayurvedic mind type, and it goes beyond Vata Pitta Kapha into the essences of them, but it goes beyond them. So be on the lookout. If you're in this live class, you're already on my email list and are connected to the announcements for this class. But if you're watching this as a recording, make sure you sign up on my website. It will be linked below this video so you can join our monthly classes, but those will be really fun classes where you're going to go through and take some quizzes and self-reflect on what your mental constitution is. So, but on a back to the basic level, sorry, I get excited. I get ahead of myself. So Vata is prone to excessive thinking, excessive worrying, and those reflexive, reactive stimulus that we had said earlier. Vata is notorious for taking everything that's said to them really personally, like internalizing it as if something is wrong with them. So they feel more fragile and more sensitive. They're also hypersensitive to sensory stimulus, meaning, they're more sensitive to light. They're more sensitive to impressions, like media impressions, things that they read about or see, or violence on videos and movies. Those kinds of things can be really triggering. Like, they can't just unsee something or unhear something. It kind of cuts through to like the core of them and rattles them. That's a Vata tendency. And Vatas, like we also said earlier, they're prone to trying to grasp something outside of themselves to feel soothed. And in that, it can turn into control. They're also preemptive and premature, like the wind. So the wind comes in little poof, little bursts and gusts. So Vata, in their mind, they will be prone to like burst of inspiration, a burst of fear, a burst of, something that they think they need to do about it. So they will be prone to premature and sometimes inappropriate action taking. So they'll be like, oh, I just need to do this. And they will like reactively jump into something that might not be the most supportive thing for them. So these are important tendencies to recognize in Vata. And if I were to summarize Vata psychology in a whole, is that they live in their mind. They have a really hard time. They might not, like me even saying these things to you of like, live in the mind might not even relate to a Vata. They're like, what are you talking about? No. This is what I think. And these are what I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. They kind of like identify with the mind so much that there's no separation between them and the mind. But Vatas need to realize, and this is one of the therapeutic things, they need to realize that they're not the mind, that they actually have a mind, but they're not the mind. Now, this is conceptual right now. It needs to be an embodied therapeutic experience to realize you're not the mind, but it's okay. Awareness is the first step. Vatas are the mind. So where they dip into more challenge is when they over-identify with their problem so much that everything becomes super narrow focused and they can't see a way out. They feel like, what choice do I have? I am stuck. This doesn't work. And Vata, when they're stuck in a lot of Vata, they talk a lot. So they will reinforce their problem by talking it out over and over and over and over. But they will make a list of why all the things that they tried didn't work. And it builds a case for why they're unhelpable. So that's one of the challenges that they need to realize. They have a tendency to feeling like I can't be helped. They might still take a step towards getting help, but they might talk themselves out of it. They'll do one or two things. They'll either talk themselves out of it because they're too afraid because they feel like it might not help me, or they'll talk themselves into it. They'll even talk, me into it as a practitioner. And I'll be like, oh, this sounds like a lot of Vata. I don't know if they're going to be able to follow through with the whole process, but they'll talk me into it. And these are the only people that sometimes they fall off of the programs because they make premature, like reflexive, impulsive decisions to try to fix themselves or heal themselves. But then they detach from it because they get deflated because they're on to the next gust of wind that comes, the next thing, kind of shiny object of like, no, this thing is promising me it's going to work, so I'm not going to do that anymore. So it's very, very important that if you find yourself jumping from thing to thing and then making a list of things that don't work and then starting to come to the conclusion that you're unhelpable or unfixable, that's when you need to find a container, a guide that can really hold your hand and help you see something all the way through. ideally for a long period of time, not just like a 3-week course or a 6-week course or something super fast. Vatas, they need time to go through the process, to create a stability in their system. And so here comes the superpower. So Vatas are a flower. So the challenge for Vatas is that they live in the mind. They identify with the mind. But Vata needs to be treated like a flower. So you think about a flower is so beautiful and delicate, and it needs to be invited with warmth, and it needs to be nourished consistently over a long period of time, of many seasons, because flowers don't just happen in a day. A flower, the seeds in our garden right now for all of our flowers, they are resting over the winter. And then in the spring, because they've been watered all winter and cozied in their warm soil, they will start to sprout. And then the warmth of the sun will invite them into their growth and into their delicate process of blossoming. So Vata needs to be treated like a flower over a long period of time with consistency to be nourished. And part of that is to create some bumpers for the Vata mind to help redirect it towards the nourishing process, not towards the fear, fear cycle that feeds itself. So I'm putting a little more emphasis on this Vata because everyone has, if there's unresolved emotions, everyone has some of these aspects of them. I mean, everyone has all three. But when it comes to trauma healing, when it comes to healing the subconscious mind, when it comes to resolving or reprocessing past painful experiences or stuck emotions, hidden emotions, some element of this Vata is going to be true across the board. And that's treat it like a flower. It needs a long period of time. This is why I don't do any of my therapeutic work in any container less than 6 months. I work with everyone, hold their hand for 6 months, and they connect with me consistently throughout that time, because we need multiple seasons, and we need to go through these therapeutic phases in a way that's not rushed, because Vata will run away if confronted harshly. Or so like you could be like to a Vata person, tell it like it is, like, hey, here's what you need to do, just go do it, toughen up. They're not going to respond well to that. A Kapha person would probably respond well to that. Even a Pitta person would probably rise to the challenge. Those might be motivating for a Pitta or Kapha person. A Vata person is usually going to either fawn, go into people pleasing and be like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. But really inside, they're going to feel like criticized, or like that person is really hard, or I don't know if I can do it, or so they'll second guess themselves, or they're just going to run away and feel more alone again, because wind makes us feel isolated and alone because it's cold and harsh. So again, that flower needs to be nurtured and invited with love, with compassion, with non-judgment, and in a spaciousness that they don't feel rushed. They cannot feel rushed or pressured. While simultaneously, there's also a cyclical aspect to nature, so they can't get stuck in their indecision, which is easy for Vata to get stuck in indecision. So they need to be coaxed to believe in themselves and do it, but without a feeling of pressure, like my support is going to be removed and taken out from under me if I can't perform. That's the worst for Vata. That'll just perpetuate more Vata. So through Ayurveda, we work with nourishing the nervous system on a physical level, making sure the physical nutrients are there, like I talked about earlier. Nutrition, tissue nutrition is a foundation for early early vata, making sure they're eating the right things on a regular schedule, but not just the dogmatic Ayurveda things from Ayurveda 101. We're talking about a refined Ayurveda that is going into more of this, applying it also to Western bodies, because you'll be surprised at what really pacifies and nourishes vata. And if any of you, I know some of you on this call have had the personalized Ayurvedic cleanse package program. I call it cleanse in air quotes because for some people it's not a cleanse, it's actually a rasayana, it's actually rejuvenation. But people who vatas might be looking for a cleanse only to realize, oh, they're not tired because they have excess in their body. They're tired because they're depleted and they need to nourish the system and nourish the tissues. So that's what we do through our gut reset and personalized cleanse program. So this is foundational for vata, but then we also need to create practices for the vata mind, because they respond really well to certain Ayurvedic therapies that are more tangible for them to feel safe. So safety and nourishment and relaxing the nervous system, these are the pillars for vata, and treating vata like a flower with gentleness and consistency. So there you go. So there's the vata challenges and superpowers, and we'll continue to pitta. I hope this is fun for some of you. I still see you all here. Thanks for staying. That's really nice. Okay. So pitta we know is associated with the element of fire. Pitta psychology is very self-controlled, strong-willed. They will will themselves to do whatever they believe and have faith in. So when the fire is in excess and when pitta is in excess, it leads to emotions of, rage, anger, frustration, general irritation, impatience, like total impatience with the process, the people in their environment. They do want results, and they want results quick, but they also need to be convinced that it's going to work, because I'm not wasting my energy on something that might not work. So they thrive a little bit more on the data and on the proof. But also pitta can be really hypercritical. So that can be externalized towards, they are quick to blame. They know to blame others for their problem, for the other practitioners who didn't help them, for the system of medicine that failed them. They're quick to blame, and they're hypercritical of that, or that can also be internalized into feelings of inadequacy and perfectionism, which can just burn them up inside. And often those are things that were conditioned into them as child, where they had to learn how to cope, and they became more, aggressive or guarded or defensive. Now, vatas can also stoke their own pitta. This can be a vata-pitta combination kind of thing, where vata feels afraid and so it goes into that control or that fiery aspect, or vata feels like weak and exposed, or if a pitta feels weak or exposed, which is like a vata emotion a little bit, it can go into hyper defensiveness and pushing back anyone who challenges it. So pitta has more of that like kind of enemy, black and white, on guardedness psychology. But the superpower of pitta is also the fire. So the superpower of pitta is its intelligence, because once a pitta is convinced and starts to see little results right away, they're gonna go, they'll take it all the way. They have such a willpower that they will do no matter what it takes, they will implement the thing if they have a belief and a conviction. So faith and intelligence are pitta's superpowers. So pitta needs to learn how to redirect its faith into into more of the spiritual aspects of existence rather than into the material aspects of existence, because that's what's going to direct its heart towards the most fulfilling path for it. But also faith also in this context has to do just with like belief in themselves to be able to heal themselves, or belief in higher power to heal me, or belief in nature to heal me, to belief in the science of Ayurveda that makes sense to them. So they have to like be able to, so they're the ones that many of you maybe showing up for class being like, Alicia's going to teach me something, and that's going to help me, my mind and this pitta part of me and my intelligence grasp onto some higher information that I can then apply and take me to where I want to go. When it comes to, so yeah, that inner conviction, that faith, that belief that it's going to work. So if you have this pitta mind tendency, you may have really been inspired by some of the stories I told early, because it's like, these are case studies, there's some proof, or there's, research that out there in the Western world, like the mind might just want some data. And that's totally okay. We need to use the pitta intelligence, the superpower of pitta, and feed it the higher information. But once pitta like grasps onto higher intelligence, wisdom, not just information, that's where we want to direct pitta, to the wisdom, not just low-level mundane information that can create information overload, but rather because pittas also can live in their mind. Because a pitta psychology type also is like believes that they've tried everything and that there's nothing else they can help. And if you're going to tell them anything different, it's just like, well, you better really prove it to me, because I've been let down so many times, so I'm on guard, right? So there's that. But if we can kind of cool and soften that aspect, the hypervigilant part of pitta, the hypercritical part of aspect of pitta, and steer the intelligence towards wisdom and a higher truth, then that pitta psychology can soften and surrender and let go into the process of healing, and allow, there's like a peripheral vision of the pitta psychology that needs to be exercised and opened, because pitta in their hyper focus can get a little bit narrow minded. So if they go into a reductionist philosophies and systems, then they might get stuck in certain things like functional medicine or even allopathy that has this reductionist mentality, which takes them out of their environment and takes their physical health thing away from their emotions, which isn't wisdom. It's a reductionist system that actually isn't going to heal the thing, especially if it's a chronic condition. So the peripheral vision of a pitta needs to open, meaning there's a bigger context that a wisdom lens allows, which is Ayurvedic psychology, yogic psychology, this Ayurvedic therapeutic process that we've been talking about today. So there's like a zoom out, and now pitta starts to enter into wisdom, because they start to realize, oh, I'm not separate. My dosha has been impacted by the things I experienced as a child. And I can't be separated. My health can't be separated from the environment that I live in every day, from my work, from my family, from my home, from my neighborhood, from my city, from my town. I can't be separated from my connection to spirit, from how I relate to emotions. So everything is a relationship. And so once a pitta can use its intelligence to soften and open its peripheral vision and start to see everything, and then have enough conviction to trust the process, surrender and letting go allows it to soften, which basically it softens the harsh edges of a pitta psychology, and it allows them to be present instead of trying to get somewhere and instead of trying to prove something. It opens up this real portal for healing through wisdom, through surrender, through trust, through faith, and through the right use of their intelligence. Okay. And then finally, kapha psychology. So kapha psychology it's the least likely to reach out for help, honestly. It's usually because two things. One, a true kapha psychology is usually the least likely to have psychological challenges. Because kapha is water and earth, it's the most stable of psychologies. So kapha in its healthy expression is just very loving and forgiving. And that's its superpower is compassion and forgiveness. And so therefore, because it's typically just in a general Ayurvedic sense, it's more stable. But when there's, so it's the least likely to come to me for help because it doesn't need it. And then second, it's less likely to come to me for help because if it really needs help, it's usually stuck in inertia. So when there is trauma or early childhood imprints or like true challenges, like in the psyche of a kapha, it lends itself, because kapha is water and earth, there's a dullness and a low sensitivity to the help. So it's like, what do you mean I have a problem? Like, what do you mean there is no issue? But yet they're completely avoiding an entire area of their life. Everything gets kind of swept under the rug, and they'll go on like that for decades and decades until something becomes an emergency before they will take any proactive steps, because they just don't see the connection, because they don't feel it. They're not sensitive to it, and they're pretty much just okay. Or they've just gotten used to maybe a more depressive, stuck state, and they just think that that's how they are. When they do have a genuine challenge, though, if they do say go reach out for help, because maybe other people in their environment usually have to prompt them. They're like, something's up, like you seem super down, you're very stagnant, maybe you're overweight, you're having all these congestion issues. They kind of can be the type to just relax into being taken care of because they don't want to change. Where Vata and Pitta, they have more fire and movement and air. So they're like, something's wrong here, I need to make a change. Where Kapha is like, oh, can you just take care of it for me? Oh, they'll take care of it. It's fine. I can just stay here. So there's just that, it's easy for them to kind of go into like maybe a codependency, but Vatas will go into a codependency too, because of that. They need that stabilizer thing, like we were talking earlier, where Pittas go into codependency just because it's easier, just because there's an inertia associated with kapha. So, so say someone in their outside environment usually has to prompt them and be like, okay, they got to light a fire under their butt somehow. Maybe they, give them an ultimatum or something that's like, okay, I'm going to do something about it. And then they go to actually do something about it, to talk to someone or whatever. And then they come and, or the pain is just too great, which is enough. There has to be something sharp though, that makes them come to get help. And so, but what happens is they will replay. There's like a sentimentality of their story, so they can't let go of the story. So they will come to every single session and replay the whole story, which keeps them in the story. So it can be hard to work with that. So those are some of the kaphic challenges, which again is why a period of 6 months is more ideal, because it takes a little bit for a kapha to overcome its inertia, light a fire under it. So you have to just talk directly to a kapha. You can't, a kapha can't be given lots of information because they're just like, it kind of rolls over them. So it's like something sharp and straight to the point, and even a challenge. Those methods are what kind of get kapha up and moving. So they need more consistency and frequency to like overcome the inertia. But once they do, once you get a kapha over the hump of that inertia, if you can turn on their solar mechanisms in their body and get a little bit of that fire going, they will stay consistent. They'll consistently do the inner work, and you just got to be straight and direct and clear with yourself if you're a kapha, or with a kapha person. And really to help them reclaim a sense of purpose in their life, reclaim a sense of control in their life, to detach from their external attachments of just being taken care of. They need to stoke that kind of inner fire. But when it comes to like healing the past pain, because kapha is kapha has compassion and forgiveness, they might have to move through other emotions first to get there, but to embrace that superpower of theirs really ends up helping. So even if they were really hurt in the past, it's just a little easier for kapha to access genuine forgiveness, where, you know, vata and pitta, and I'd say all doshas actually, in order, just a side note on forgiveness, we can't jump there too quick. We have to usually go through authentic movement of other emotions, such as acknowledging terror, acknowledging fear, acknowledging rage and anger and just and sadness and grief, in order to then arrive at a genuine forgiveness. But forgiveness can be a goal. Like if we're like, I want to stop blaming my caregiver for all the hurtful things that I want to forgive. I want to stop blaming, or, you know, feeling, externalizing that. That's an indicator that you're ready to move from being stuck, that season of stuckness is coming to an end, and you're like, I'm willing to reclaim my power in this situation and heal and move forward. So but kaphas, as part of their superpower, it's easy for them to access compassion and forgiveness, and so they'll be able to use that as a tool to help access the deeper emotions. But really, it's part of the emotional reprocessing for all three doshic types. So I hope this makes sense. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, because we're about to wrap up. I told you I would tell you, I know I've been talking about the therapeutic process a little bit as we go, but yeah, those are the three kind of main categories of challenges for all the doshic types, vata, pitta, and kapha, and their superpowers, so that you can start to learn like, oh, when do I need which? And if I'm also just taking inventory on myself, where do I spend most of my time emotionally? Where are my emotional go-tos? So for your self-reflection, you can reflect after this class, or pause if you're watching the recording, and just say, where do I go most often when I'm under stress? To more of the reactiveness, overthinking, fear, feeling inadequate, that type of thing. Do I go more to blame of others? You know, do I instantly label enemies? Do I feel, you know, frustrated, irritated? Am I hypercritical of myself or others? Where do I go when I'm under stress? Or do I kind of resort to stagnation, resort to low sensitivity, to numbing out, to reducing my, you know, to more passive energy? That'll start to give you an indicator of where you go during stress, not where like, oh no, I've overcome all of those. I think I'm tridoshic, which tridoshic doesn't mean that you're balanced. Tridosha is one of the hardest dosha types to deal with, because you have equal of all three. So anyone can go out of balance at any time. And they do often. So, but where do you see yourself under stress? Stress is the key here. So do a little self-reflecting and reflect a little bit on those the superpowers of each, so that you know, okay, here's some of the approach that I need to take. And then, all in all, this type of healing, depth work requires facilitation. And ideally, I think I've kind of built the case for long form facilitation of going through a process where you don't feel pressured, where you have enough time to surrender to a process, to overcome inertia, and, be able to really work through in a highly refined and precise way into the subconscious recesses of your mind and emotions, and reprocess these things. So there's 3 phases that are vital that I personally use in a 6-month format. And if those of you who want to explore potentially working in that format together, I'll put a link below the video. I'll send it in email with a recording to this video as well. And I'll also just put it in the chat. So I have some openings in the new year. So if you want to start your new year off, really getting that support and getting free from the emotional aspects of the physical health challenges, and also work through connecting the dots so that you're also working towards the deep nourishment and the cleansing or the rewiring of the health things, rebalancing the hormones, or whatever chronic health issue you might be dealing with. We can talk about that in a consultation. And this consultation, we will talk about the potential of working together for 6 months, but that's not the main point. The main point is I can give you very focused feedback on what your next step should and might be. And it might not be the 6-month program. It might be one of our other intro programs, or it might be working with another practitioner that I can refer you to. So if you click that link and find a consult on my calendar for the new year, we can explore what's the best next step for your personal situation. But I'll give you a brief overview of what the 3 therapeutic phases are, regardless if you work with me or not. It's good to just know these as just support for your healing. So phase 1, we talked about this one a lot today, but it's creating safety. So like I said, no matter what, for Vata needs to feel and cultivate a sense of safety in their nervous system, a sense of safety in connecting with their own emotions and feeling their own emotions, and how to start to create an even playing field, like to move from. So there needs to be consistency and safety. So safety is number 1, safety in thoughts, safety in emotions, safety and consistency of practices, safety in your environment, safety in the nervous system. So it's really hard, if not impossible, to do some really the deepest work when you're in an unsafe body, mind, and environment. But that's not to say none of it can happen. Like I've gone through periods of time. I shouldn't say that was a very general statement. I went through a period of time where I was in a very toxic relationship living with that partner. And I went through facilitated therapeutic process, which allowed me enough to change my environment. But then the deeper work happened for me once I was out of there, because then I could feel safe. So I don't know why I felt to add that as just like a general overview, but it's an example, macrocosm, microcosm. If you're not eating right and your nervous system is super on edge and you're not sleeping at night, well, we need to work on those first. So we set up the 6-month program that you're establishing a sense of safety within the first couple of months, because that will then allow for phase 2 for the second stage. So the second stage then is called reprocessing. So then we establish this connection where the subconscious mind feels safe, where you feel stable in your body and nervous system. And then we go in and do the therapeutic modalities to reprocess the deeper triggers and past events that lodged Vata into your system, into your nervous system in the first place. And so we can talk more about that on the one-on-one call if that's something you're interested in. I won't go into too much detail on that. But phase 1 and 2 are the most important that I feel are vital to share with a student base and with all of you listening, because some of you who have gone into doing somatic work or trauma healing work or different kinds of therapies, if the safety wasn't established first, meaning Vata wasn't, you didn't know how to calm Vata, you didn't know how to really put yourself on the right trajectory for nourishing the body and working with the specific chronic health imbalances or hormonal imbalances or whatever that you're dealing with, then the therapy can only take you so far. So the safety phase has to come before the reprocessing phase, in order for the reprocessing phase to be very deep and thorough and complete. And then that gives way to phase 3, which is called integration. So phase 3, you then integrate all that happened in phase 1 and 2, and it allows you to then embody this refreshed, rejuvenated, calm way of being. Now you start to integrate the true, authentic you in your day-to-day life, because prior to that, it wasn't the true, authentic you shining through. It was these veils of the illness. It was these veils of learned behaviors. It were these veils of emotion or Vata, Pitta, Kapha imbalances. So you were reacting to the world through the veils. And so in the integration phase, you actually start to interact with the world from beyond the veils, from beneath the veils, from inside the veils, into the deeper part of who you really are. And then you just feel more natural and free. And so those are the 3 phases. There's another aspect of this that I will teach you in our one-on-one call if you just decide to book one, which are the 4 quadrants. And the 4 quadrants go into our inner world and our outer world, and then our personal, singular, just me, individual, and communal world. So there's the inner you, that's your identity and your connection with spirit and your connection to your heart and your inner self. Then there's your outer self, which are the things that you do every day, your schedule, your routines, your practices, your health practices, the tools that you learn, for healing, all of that. And then there's the individual that's just for you. And then there's the context that you're a part of, which is your family unit, your community unit, your work, your neighborhood, your town, those kinds of things. So there's, you are a beautifully complex, interconnected being that is not just a set of symptoms or a label of an illness. Those are just little pieces of a big context of you. So these 4 quadrants will map out and show us the direction we need to move to really create and facilitate deep healing and the reversal of those illnesses or the rebalancing of your health. And so I can share more about that map as it pertains to you as an individual on that one-on-one call if you book it. I can also teach future classes on it. But it's like one of those things that the 4 quadrants, it's like if we map it out to you as an individual, it's more valuable than learning it as a general teaching concept. So yeah, so in this workshop, I hope it opened your awareness, and that you also realize this is step 1 of many steps, but please take the information from today, self-identify, self-reflect, go back and look at your notes, go back and just look at specifically, what can I do right now or this week to set myself up to feel a little bit more safe in my body? So just starting with that phase 1. So I'll leave you with that as one action step, in addition to possibly booking a one-on-one call with me, which you're welcome to do. But just to work with that first therapeutic phase inside of yourself, what's one thing I can do today or this week that will help increase my sense of safety? Now, that could be physical safety, that could be emotional safety, that can be safety within yourself as an individual, or safety within the context of the environments you spend time with each day. So what's one thing you can do right now for increasing safety? Okay, friends, so we'll wrap up there. Thank you for hanging with me for so long. And thank you for your attention and for connecting today. I'm surprised there were no questions from today's class. Oh, let me see. I did see one. Oh, there was a question. Can you say a bit about tridoshic individuals? And I did speak to that. I think I probably spoke to it after you asked. So hopefully that came across. And Sharon, today has been so helpful. I appreciate you taking this time for us. Oh, my pleasure. Yes, you're welcome, V. You're welcome, everyone. Thank you for spending time here. We'll do one little closing prayer, and then oh, there was one other. Sorry, you're preaching to the choir in this conversation. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. And Gargana, mind work and awareness of emotion and self-regulation has been key. Yes. And I'm so glad you've been following my work for a while. Thank you for letting me know. And thank you for joining in live today. It's really nice to have you. And I'm glad that these classes have been supportive. One of you said something about the ACEs. Sharon. Yeah. Oh, Amy, hi, Amy. Thank you for sending the link to the ACE book. That's awesome. Great awareness. Oh, and it's so funny. Some of these comments didn't come up for some reason when I was scrolling. So now I see them all. Okay. Wonderful. Lots and lots of love to you all. We'll sign out with a little prayer for the protection and goodness of all beings in all places for all time. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Love and peace to you all. Blessings, and I hope I get to talk to some of you one-on-one in the new year. All right, take care. Bye for now.